I've always lived in Ronan's shadow. He's a golden boy, the one everyone expects to conquer the world. Me? I'm just Callan, the guy who never quite measures up. Growing up in a family that practically worships him felt like trying to grow a flower in the shade of an oak tree. You stretch and strain for sunlight, but all you get are scraps. I remember our Thanksgiving dinners. Ronan would sit at the head of the table, regaling everyone with stories about his latest business deal or how he just closed another multi-million-dollar contract. Meanwhile, I'd be sitting there, quietly eating my mashed potatoes, hoping no one would ask me what I was doing with my life. That year wasn't any different. So, Callan, my dad said between bites of turkey, still working at that PR agency? His tone was casual, but I could hear the judgment beneath it. Before I could answer, Ronan chimed in. Yeah, Dad, he's still clocking in at the same dead-end job. At least they let him keep the coffee machine running. Everyone laughed, not because it was funny, but because laughing made it easier to ignore the awkwardness. But deep down it stung. Every word out of Ronan's mouth felt like a hammer driving nails into my self-esteem. After dinner, I went outside to clear my head. The cold November air bit at my cheeks, but it felt good. It grounded me. As I leaned against the railing on the porch, I heard voices coming from inside. Iloan, my childhood friend, was talking to my mom in the living room. He's got potential, Mrs. Drake. He just needs someone to believe in him. I froze. Was she talking about me? Curiosity got the better of me, and I crept closer to listen. Callan's been working on this app idea. Iloan continued. It's rough around the edges, sure, but if he puts his mind to it, he could really make something of it. My heart raced. No one had ever spoken about me like that before, not even me. I'd been tinkering with the idea for FlowSync for months, coding late into the night after work, but I kept it hidden away, too afraid to show anyone. Hearing Iloan defend me gave me a flicker of hope, a tiny spark that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't destined to fail. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of clarity. For once, I didn't feel like the loser everyone expected me to be. Instead, I felt determined. I spent the entire day researching startup accelerators, and by evening, I found one that seemed perfect. The Stockholm Tech Accelerator Program, SDAP. They were looking for innovative ideas, and FlowSync, my productivity app designed to streamline team collaboration, fit the bill perfectly. I stayed up all night polishing my application. By sunrise, I hit submit. Exhausted but exhilarated, I collapsed onto my couch. That's when Ronan walked in. He'd stayed over after Thanksgiving dinner, as usual, acting like he owned the place. "What are you doing up so early?" he asked, smirking. When I told him about the accelerator program, his expression shifted from amusement to disbelief. "You're wasting your time, Callan. You think some half-baked app is going to change your life? Stick to making PowerPoint presentations. That's what you're good at." His words cut deep, but instead of deflating me, they lit a fire under me. If nothing else, I wanted to prove him wrong. For weeks after submitting my application, I oscillated between hope and despair. What if Ronan was right? What if FlowSync really was just another pipe dream? The waiting game was torture, and every time I passed Ronan in the hallway, his smug grin reminded me of how foolish I probably looked in his eyes. To distract myself, I threw myself into improving the app. I added features, fixed bugs, and even created a mock-up of the user interface. Iloan stopped by one evening to check on my progress. "You're doing great, Callan," she said, scrolling to the prototype on my laptop. "This is solid. Don't let Ronan get into your head. He's just jealous." Jealous? The thought had never crossed my mind. Ronan jealous of me? It sounded absurd, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Maybe his constant jabs weren't just about putting me down. They were about keeping me down. Then came the email that changed everything. Subject line: "Congratulations. You've been accepted into SDAP." I read it 3 times before it sank in. I'd done it. I'd actually gotten in. My hands trembled as I forwarded the email to Iloan, who replied almost instantly, "Told you so." When I told my family, their reactions were predictable. My mom smiled politely, but didn't seem to grasp the significance. My dad nodded approvingly, but quickly steered the conversation back to Ronan's latest achievement. And Ronan? He laughed. Good luck with that, little brother. Let me know when reality hits and you come crawling back. His words should have crushed me, but they didn't. For the first time, I didn't care what he thought. I was done living in his shadow. Quitting my job was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Walking into my boss's office that Monday morning, resignation letter in hand, felt surreal. Are you sure about this, Callan? She asked, raising an eyebrow. You're throwing away stability for what exactly? Her skepticism mirrored Ronan's, but I held my ground. I need to do this, I said firmly. For me, the fallout was immediate. Ronan called me reckless. My parents worried I'd made a mistake, and my co-workers whispered behind my back. But Aloan stood by me, offering guidance and encouragement. You'll figure it out, she assured me. You're stronger than you think. Those words carried me through the uncertainty. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was taking control of my destiny, even if it meant starting from scratch. The first few weeks in the accelerator program were brutal. I was surrounded by brilliant minds, people who seemed to know exactly what they were doing. Meanwhile, I fumbled through pitch meetings, struggled to articulate my vision, and nearly gave up more times than I could count. There were nights when I questioned whether I belonged there, whether I was just fooling myself into thinking I could succeed. But then there were moments of triumph, like the day I presented FlowSync to a panel of investors and saw their eyes light up with interest, or the night Aloan helped me debug a particularly stubborn glitch, her laughter cutting through the tension as we celebrated each small victory. Slowly but surely, I began to find my footing, and though Ronan's voice still echoed in the back of my mind, telling me I'd fail, I learned to tune it out. Just as I started gaining momentum with FlowSync, life threw Ronan a curveball. One Friday evening, he called me out of the blue, something he never did unless he needed something. His voice was tight, almost brittle. Callan, can we talk? He asked. We met at a quiet cafe downtown, and for the first time in years, I saw vulnerability in his eyes. I got laid off, he admitted after ordering a black coffee. The words hung heavy in the air. Ronan, the man who had always seemed untouchable, whose career was a fortress of success, had been downsized during a corporate restructuring. He tried to brush it off, saying things like, it's just temporary, and I'll land on my feet, but I could see the cracks forming beneath his polished exterior. For a moment, I felt sorry for him, but then he added, don't think this means you're ahead of me now. This is just a bump in the road. And just like that, any sympathy I might have felt evaporated. While Ronan scrambled to find a new job, FlowSync began picking up steam. A prominent tech blog featured us in an article titled Startups to Watch in 2024, which led to a flood of interest from investors and potential users. Suddenly, I wasn't just some guy tinkering with code. I was a founder of a promising app. People actually wanted to hear what I had to say. The highlight came when a major European company reached out about partnering with us. Their offer was more than I'd ever dreamed possible. A six-figure investment and access to their vast network of clients. Aloan helped me negotiate the terms, her confidence bolstering mine. As we finalized the deal, I couldn't help but think of all the times Ronan had dismissed my dreams. Now, those dreams were becoming reality, and they weren't asking him for permission. News of the partnership spread quickly, even reaching our parents. My dad called me one evening, sounding uncharacteristically proud. Your mother showed me the article about your app, he said. Looks like you're making a name for yourself. It was the first time he'd acknowledged my achievements without comparing me to Ronan. I should have felt triumphant, but instead, I felt conflicted. Why did it take so long for him to see me? Things came to a head at another family dinner. Ronan was there, looking haggard and defeated. When my dad brought up FlowSync, Ronan snapped. Yeah, congrats, Callan, he sneered. You finally got lucky. Meanwhile, I've spent years building a real career, and look where it got me. His bitterness was palpable, but so was his desperation. Later, as we stood alone in the kitchen, he lowered his voice. Can I borrow some money? Just until I get back on my feet. Part of me wanted to refuse, to make him feel the same sting of rejection he'd inflicted on me, But another part remembered how much we used to mean to each other. I hesitated, unsure of what to do. After days of deliberation, I made a decision that shocked everyone, including myself. I offered Ronan a job at FlowSync, not because I pitted him, but because his skills as a consultant could actually benefit the company. He stared at me incredulously when I proposed it. "You want me to work for you?" he asked, his voice dripping with disbelief. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious," I replied. "We need someone with your expertise to handle client relations. Think of it as redemption." His pride bristled, but after a long pause, he nodded reluctantly. It wasn't exactly forgiveness, but it was a start. Watching him walk into the office on his first day felt surreal. He looked uncomfortable in his suit, surrounded by people half his age who didn't know or care that he used to be the big shot. For once, I held the upper hand. Working together proved harder than I anticipated. Ronan struggled to adjust to the startup culture, where collaboration trumped hierarchy. He kept trying to assert authority over decisions that weren't his to make, alienating both employees and clients. During one particularly heated meeting, he openly questioned my leadership in front of everyone. "This strategy isn't sustainable," he argued. "If we don't pivot soon, we'll lose momentum." His criticism stung, not because it was entirely wrong, but because it came from him. Afterward, Eloan pulled me aside. "You can't let him undermine you," she warned. "He's testing your limits. If you don't stand firm, he'll take over." She was right. That night, I confronted Ronan in my office. "Listen," I said, my voice steady despite the anger simmering inside me. "I hired you to help, not to sabotage. If you can't respect my role here, maybe this isn't the place for you." To his credit, he backed down, but the tension between us remained palpable. A few weeks later, disaster struck. A rival company filed a lawsuit against us, claiming FlowSync infringed on their intellectual property. Panic rippled through the team as we scrambled to defend ourselves. Then, Eloan discovered something shocking. Ronan had been secretly leaking confidential information to the rival firm. When confronted, he didn't deny it. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," he confessed, his voice trembling. I wanted to prove I was still better than you." His betrayal cut deeper than anything he'd ever said to me. I felt betrayed not just as a CEO, but as a brother. "How could you do this?" I demanded. "After everything I've done for you?" He looked away, shame written across his face. "I'm sorry, Callan. I messed up." For the first time, I saw him for what he truly was. A man consumed by jealousy and insecurity, willing to destroy others to elevate himself. Despite the chaos, we managed to fight back. With Eloan's help, I rallied the team and presented a compelling defense in court. The judge ultimately ruled in our favor, dismissing the lawsuit as baseless. It was a victory, but it came at a cost. Ronan resigned shortly afterward, unable to face the consequences of his actions. "I'll fix this," he promised before leaving. "I owe you that much." I gave him one last chance, not because I trusted him, but because I believed in second chances. I assigned him to lead a smaller project within the company, hoping it would give him a chance to rebuild his reputation. And maybe ours too. But trust is fragile, and forgiveness doesn't come easily. Every interaction between us was fraught with unspoken tension, a reminder of how far we'd fallen from the brothers we used to be. The lawsuit may have been resolved, but its aftermath lingered like a storm cloud over FlowSync. Investors were skittish, employees were on edge, and Ronan's betrayal had left a stain on the company's reputation. To reassure everyone, I called an emergency board meeting. As I stood at the head of the table, Ronan's old seat now conspicuously empty, I felt the weight of leadership pressing down on me. "I won't lie to you," I began, my voice steady despite the nerves bubbling beneath the surface. "This has been one of the toughest chapters in our journey. But let me tell you something. We're still here. And not only are we still here, we're stronger than ever." I went on to outline our next steps, expanding into new markets, launching a premium version of FlowSync, and doubling down on user feedback to refine the product. By the time I finished, even the most skeptical board members were nodding in approval. But the real test came when one investor asked about Ronan. How can we trust your leadership when someone so close to you betrayed the company? He challenged. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then I took a deep breath and said, Ronan made a mistake, a big one. But mistakes don't define us. How we respond to them does. I'm choosing to give him a chance to make amends because that's what leaders do. They take risks even when it's hard. The room erupted in applause, and for the first time, I truly felt like I belonged in that chair. After the meeting, I found Ronan waiting outside my office. He looked smaller somehow, his usual bravado stripped away. I heard what you said in there, he murmured, about giving me a second chance. His voice cracked slightly, and I realized how much this meant to him. Not just professionally, but personally. Don't thank me yet, I replied, leaning against the doorframe. This is your last shot, Ronan. If you screw this up, I won't be able to save you, or myself, from the fallout. He nodded solemnly. I understand, and I'm sorry for everything. It wasn't enough to erase the pain he'd caused, but it was a start. Over the next few weeks, Ronan threw himself into his new role with a fervor I'd never seen before. He worked late nights, met with clients who had nearly walked away, and even helped streamline our internal processes. Slowly but surely, he began earning back some of the respect he'd lost. With the lawsuit behind us and Ronan proving his worth, FlowSync soared to new heights. We expanded globally, secured partnerships with major corporations, and became a household name in productivity tools. For the first time in my life, I felt like I'd truly arrived. I celebrated by buying a sleek penthouse apartment overlooking Stockholm's glittering skyline. Every morning, I'd sit by the floor-to-ceiling windows with a cup of coffee, watching the city wake up below me. It was surreal, the kind of view I'd only dreamed about during those long nights coding in my tiny studio. But success came with sacrifices. My relentless focus on FlowSync left little room for anything else. Friends drifted away, hobbies fell by the wayside, and even Aloan started pulling back. You're changing, Callan, she said one evening after a particularly grueling workday. I missed the guy who used to laugh at bad jokes and geek out over sci-fi movies. Her words hit home, reminding me that I'd become so consumed with proving myself that I'd forgotten what mattered most. As Ronan continued to rebuild a career, I noticed subtle changes in him too. Gone was the arrogance that had once defined him. In its place was humility and gratitude. One evening, he invited me to dinner at a quiet restaurant near his apartment. I wanted to thank you, he said, raising his glass, for believing in me when no one else did, including myself. It was a rare moment of vulnerability from him, and it caught me off guard. You earned it, I replied, clinking my glass against his. But don't get too comfortable. You're still working for me. We both laughed, the sound easing some of the tension that had lingered between us for years. Later, as we walked through the chilly streets of Stockholm, Ronan admitted something I never expected to hear. I was wrong about you, Callan. All those years I thought I was better than you. Turns out you're the one who's always been stronger. It wasn't an apology, it was acknowledgement. And for the first time, I felt like maybe we could move forward, not as rivals, but as brothers. Amidst a whirlwind of success and reconciliation, Aloan remained a constant presence in my life. She'd been my rock since the beginning, cheering me on when others doubted me and calling me out when I needed it most. Yet, as FlowSync grew, I realized I hadn't been fair to her. Between board meetings, investor pitches, and late-night coding sessions, I'd pushed her to the sidelines. One rainy afternoon, she cornered me in the office kitchen. Callan, we need to talk, she said, her tone serious. My stomach dropped. Is everything okay? I asked, bracing myself for bad news. To my surprise, she smiled softly. Everything's fine, but I can't keep waiting for you to notice me. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. She deserved more than scraps of my attention. She deserved all of me. That night, I took her to dinner and told her everything. How much she meant to me, how lost I'd feel without her. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to dream not just of professional success, but of personal happiness too. Just when I thought things were finally falling into place, another challenge arose, one I hadn't anticipated. Aloan revealed that she'd been secretly negotiating to sell her stake in FlowSync to a larger corporation. It's not personal, Callan, she explained, her eyes shining with unshed tears. I've been offered an opportunity one can't pass up, but I didn't want to hurt you. Her betrayal cut deeper than Ronan's had. Iloan wasn't just my mentor or business partner. She was my friend, the person I trusted most. How could you do this? I demanded, my voice trembling with anger and hurt. After everything we built together? She looked away, guilt etched across her face. I'm sorry, she whispered. I thought I was doing the right thing, for both of us. Iloan's revelation left me reeling. For days, I oscillated between anger, betrayal, and confusion. How could she, the person who believed in me when no one else did, turn her back on FlowSync? But as the initial shock wore off, I realized something. This wasn't about her abandoning me. It was about her pursuing her own dreams. And if there was one thing I'd learned over the past year, it was that chasing your dreams often came at a cost. Still, letting her go wasn't easy. The corporation she planned to sell her shares wanted full control of FlowSync, which meant dismantling everything we'd built and turning it into something unrecognizable. I couldn't let that happen, not after all the blood, sweat, and tears we poured into it. So I made a decision that terrified me. I would buy out Iloan's shares myself, using every penny of my savings. It meant giving up the penthouse, scaling back my lifestyle, and taking a massive financial risk. But it also meant keeping FlowSync true to its vision. When I told Iloan, she looked at me with a mix of admiration and regret. You don't have to do this, Callan, she said softly. There are other ways. But I shook my head. This isn't just my company anymore. It's part of who I am. I can't walk away from it any more than you can walk away from your opportunity. She nodded, understanding without needing further explanation. As painful as it was, our farewell felt bittersweet, a mutual acknowledgement that sometimes love means letting go. Saying goodbye to luxury stung more than I expected. Moving out of the penthouse and into a modest one-bedroom apartment reminded me of the early days of FlowSync, when survival felt like a daily battle. But strangely, I found comfort in the simplicity. Without the distractions of wealth and status, I rediscovered the joy of creating something meaningful. Late nights coding, brainstorming sessions with the team, and even the occasional pizza-fueled hackathon felt refreshingly authentic. Ronan noticed the change, too. One evening, he stopped by my new place with a six-pack of beer. You seem lighter, he observed, cracking open a bottle. I laughed. Maybe losing everything helps you figure out what really matters. We spent hours talking about the future, not just mine or his, but ours. For the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a world where we weren't defined by competition or resentment. Maybe forgiveness wasn't just for Ronan. Maybe it was for me too. Months passed, and FlowSync continued to thrive under my leadership. Without the looming threat of corporate takeover, we were free to innovate and grow organically. User feedback poured in, praising the app's intuitive design and seamless functionality. Investors who had once doubted us now hailed FlowSync as a model of sustainable success. Even Ronan found his groove, earning promotions within the company and proving himself indispensable. But the real victory wasn't measured in numbers or accolades. It was in the relationships I rebuilt along the way. Iloan and I stayed in touch, our bond stronger than ever despite the distance between us. She sent me updates on her new venture, and I shared milestones from FlowSync. Though our paths had diverged, we remained connected by shared history and mutual respect. And Ronan became more than just my brother. He became my ally, my confidant, and occasionally my comic relief. On a crisp autumn morning, I stood on the rooftop of our newly expanded office building, watching the sun rise over Stockholm. Below me, the city buzzed with life. Commuters rushing to work, tourists snapping photos, vendors setting up stalls. It was chaotic, beautiful, and utterly alive. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. Not because I was rich or famous, but because I finally stopped running. I thought back to all the moments that had brought me here. The late-night coding marathons, the heated arguments with Ronan, the heart-wrenching goodbye with Iloan. Each one had shaped me, teaching me lessons I couldn't have learned any other way. Success wasn't about external validation. It was about staying true to yourself, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. As the golden light bathed the skyline, I smiled. This wasn't the ending I'd imagined. It was better, because in the end, it wasn't about proving Ronan wrong or living up to anyone else's expectations. It was about finding my own path and walking it with integrity, courage, and heart. Looking back, I realize how much I've grown, not just as an entrepreneur, but as a person. I've learned that failure is inevitable, but so is resilience. That family isn't perfect, but it's worth fighting for. And that success isn't defined by what you achieve, but by who you become in the process. Today, when people ask me about FlowSync, I tell them it's more than just an app. It's a testament to the power of perseverance, forgiveness, and faith. Faith in yourself, faith in others, and faith that no matter how dark things may seem, the dawn will always come.